The void of space had never seemed so threatening. Cassandra Cassie Dracos watched from her observation deck as the starlight gleamed against the crystal domes of Persei 3, the human colony she called home. The planet boasted some of humanity's greatest achievements: gravity-defying architecture, bustling trade centers, and technological marvels that would have seemed impossible just a century ago when humans first ventured beyond Earth. As an archaeologist and pilot, Cassie had spent the last 3 years exploring ancient ruins scattered across Persei 3's northern continent. These mysterious structures predated human settlement by millennia, covered in symbols that had become her obsession, particularly those resembling dragons, serpentine creatures with wings and fierce eyes that appeared consistently across multiple sites. Any progress on those translations? The message flashed across her comband. Still working on it, Dr. Keller, she replied. These dragon symbols keep appearing alongside what looks like warnings, almost like they were guarding something. Dr. Keller was her mentor, one of the few who took her theories seriously. Most of the scientific community dismissed the idea of pre-human intelligences as fantasy, especially anything related to mythological creatures. But Cassie knew better. The precision of these carvings, their mathematical consistency across sites thousands of miles apart. These weren't coincidences. She zoomed in on her latest find, a stone tablet depicting humanoid figures standing alongside massive winged beings. The humans appear to be working with these creatures, not fleeing from them. Her contemplation was interrupted by a sharp alarm from her wrist device. An automated alert from the Interplanetary Guard Division scrolled across the screen. Unidentified vessels entering Persei 3 orbit. All citizens seek shelter. Cassie's heart raced as she packed her equipment. Through the transparent ceiling of the excavation site, she could see unusual lights streaking across the sky. Not meteors, too organized, too purposeful. Military vessels? But whose? Her comm chimed again. This time, it was a broadcast from General Marcus Donovan, commander of the IGED fleet stationed at Persei 3. Citizens of Persei 3, this is General Donovan. We are tracking multiple hostile vessels entering our atmosphere. They have not responded to communication attempts. I urge all civilians to move to designated shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Donovan's weathered face looked grim. In his 15 years commanding the IGD forces, he had earned a reputation as a tactical genius, but also as someone skeptical of the ancient mysteries researchers like Cassie dedicated their lives to. He believed in tangible threats, in weapons you could see, not legends buried under rock. Before Cassie could reach her transport vehicle, the first explosion rocked the landscape. A blinding flash illuminated the horizon, followed by a shockwave that knocked her off her feet. The dig site's support beams groaned under the strain. More explosions followed, precise, methodical bombardment targeting major population centers. From her vantage point outside the main city, Cassie watched in horror as mushroom clouds rose above the crystal spires of New Athens, Persei 3's capital. Nuclear strikes, she whispered in disbelief. No warning, no demands, just annihilation. Her excavation team scattered, racing toward emergency shelters. But Cassie hesitated. Below the main dig site was a chamber they'd only partially explored, a sealed room that had registered unusual energy readings. If this was the end, she wanted answers, not just safety. As the ground trembled with another distant impact, she overrode the security locks and descended into the chamber. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows across walls covered in familiar symbols, but more elaborate than any she'd seen before. At the center stood a pedestal, and atop it, a crystalline device shaped like a dragon's claw. When she approached, the symbols on the walls pulsed with faint blue light. The air felt charged, as if a thunderstorm brewed within the confined space. Cassie reached for the device, her archaeologist's instincts screaming against such reckless handling of an artifact, but desperation overrode caution. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, searing pain shot through her hand. She tried to pull away, but her muscles wouldn't respond. Blood from a small cut on her palm dripped onto the device, and the symbols around the room blazed to life, projecting holographic images of star systems, planets, and dragons. Massive, majestic creatures soaring between worlds, battling alongside humans against a reptilian race with segmented armor and cruel, angular ships. The same ships now bombarding Persei 3. A final, violent explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and debris rained down as the ceiling began to collapse. Cassie tore herself away from the device, grabbing her data pad to capture images of the suddenly activated symbols. As she fled the crumbling chamber, one phrase repeated in the ancient text, now somehow comprehensible to her. Dragon's blood awakens dragon's kin. When darkness falls, fire begins. She emerged into chaos. The excavation camp was abandoned, equipment scattered in the panic. In the distance, evacuation ships were lifting off, barely visible through clouds of dust and smoke. Her own small transport remained intact, and she raced toward it, clutching the data pad with its precious images. As she piloted the craft upward, breaking through Persei 3's atmosphere, she witnessed the full extent of the devastation. The gleaming cities that had stood for generations were reduced to smoldering ruins. The attacking fleet, dozens of angular, insectoid ships, continued their bombardment with mechanical precision. IGD vessels engaged the invaders, but were clearly outmatched. For every enemy ship they managed to disable, 3 human vessels were destroyed. Through the military communication channel she monitored, Cassie heard General Donovan coordinating a desperate defense, buying time for evacuation ships to escape. Fall back to position Gamma. Focus fire on their lead vessels. His voice remained steady despite the chaos. All civilian transports, set course for the Concordia jump point. We'll cover your retreat. Cassie's small craft shuddered as debris from a destroyed IGD cruiser scraped along her hull. She adjusted course toward the designated escape route, joining a ragtag fleet of civilian vessels under military escort. As Persei 3 receded behind them, Cassie took one last look at her home. The beautiful blue-green world was now marred by angry red wounds where the bombs had fallen. But it wasn't just destruction she saw. It was a beginning. Something ancient had stirred when her blood touched that artifact. A connection had been made, a key turned in a lock sealed millennia ago. Dragon's blood awakens dragon's kin, she whispered to herself, clutching the data pad to her chest as her ship accelerated toward the jump point and whatever future awaited humanity among the stars. The refugee fleet from Persei 3 limped through space toward Concordia Station, a massive, wheel-shaped outpost that served as headquarters for the Interplanetary Guard Division and the diplomatic hub for humanity's scattered colonies. Originally designed as a symbol of human achievement and unity, it now served as a desperate gathering point for survivors. Cassie's transport docked alongside hundreds of others. The station's corridors, normally pristine and orderly, overflowed with shell-shocked refugees. Medical personnel rushed between makeshift triage centers while security forces maintained uneasy order. Name and origin. A tired-looking officer scanned her ID chip as she disembarked. Cassandra Dracos, Persei 3, Archaeological Division. She clutched her data pad protectively. I need to speak with someone in authority. I have information about the attackers. The officer looked skeptical, but directed her to a processing center where refugees with potential intelligence were being interviewed. As she waited, screens throughout the station broadcast news that turned her blood cold. Persei 3 wasn't the only target. 3 other major colonies had been hit simultaneously, including Earth itself. Billions dead in coordinated strikes. The enemy vessels have been identified as belonging to the Kravoks, announced a grim-faced newscaster. A previously unknown species from the Cygnus sector. No demands have been made. No communication established. They simply attacked without warning. Hours passed before Cassie was ushered into a conference room where military and civilian leaders had gathered. General Donovan was there, his uniform singed and face haggard from the battle. He had managed to escape with the last defensive squadron, having held the line until the final civilian ships jumped to safety. Miss Dracos. He nodded curtly. I'm told you have information. Cassie connected her datapad to the room's display system. The ancient symbols and holographic projections from the underground chamber flickered to life on the screen. These images were recorded just as the attack began, she explained. I was at an archaeological site investigating pre-human ruins when I discovered a sealed chamber. Inside was technology far beyond what we've encountered before. She described how her blood had activated the device and the vision she'd seen. The ships attacking us, the Kravoks, they were depicted in these ancient records, fighting against humans and something else, something that looked like dragons. A murmur ran through the assembled officials. Admiral Zhao, Earth Defense Force commander, snorted derisively. Dragons? Mythological creatures? We're facing extinction, and you're talking about fairy tales? With respect, Admiral, Cassie countered, the ruins accurately depicted the Kravok ships, a species we've never encountered before today. That can't be coincidence. General Donovan studied the images carefully. Unlike his colleagues, he didn't immediately dismiss her. What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Dracos? I believe the ancient text refers to allies humanity once had, possibly a highly advanced species that our ancestors called dragons because of their appearance. The symbol suggests they fought alongside us against the Kravoks in a war so long ago it passed into myth. But they weren't myths. They were real. She pointed to the recurring phrase, "Dragon's blood awakens dragon's kin." Something happened when my blood touched that artifact. I think I may carry some genetic marker related to these beings. And I think they might still exist, somewhere. The room erupted in arguments. Some officials pushed for immediate authorization of planet-killer weapons, the kind of weapons humanity had sworn never to use after the devastating colonial wars. Others demanded further investigation into Cassie's claims, however far-fetched they seemed. In the chaos, General Donovan pulled Cassie aside. I've spent my career dealing with tangible threats, Miss Dracos. Enemies I can see, weapons I understand. He gestured to the images. This is beyond my experience. But we're losing this war before it's properly begun. If there's even a chance you're right, we need to pursue it. While the council debated, Cassie gained access to Concordia's vast library archives. There, she searched for any reference to dragons or ancient defenses. Most yielded nothing but folklore from Earth, stories of fire-breathing monsters from medieval Europe or serpent gods from Asia. But buried in classified military archives, she found something extraordinary, Project Draco, a centuries-old research initiative, abandoned and sealed away by order of Earth's unified government. The records were fragmented, but they referenced entities in stasis and non-human intelligence assets being contained for security purposes. Most importantly, the files contained coordinates to a planet called Drazel, located in an uncharted system far from established human territory. Project Notes described it as the source and where it all began. Armed with this information, Cassie returned to the council chambers where the debate had devolved into shouting matches between military factions. I know where to look, she announced, interrupting an admiral mid-sentence. Project Draco. Drazel. The room fell silent. An older counselor, Dr. Amelia Vega, paled visibly. How do you know that name? She whispered. The archives, Cassie replied. It's connected to what I found on Persei 3. We need to go there, to Drazel. Dr. Vega exchanged glances with General Donovan. Project Draco was classified at the highest level. It was deemed too dangerous to pursue. More dangerous than extinction. Cassie challenged. The Kravoks aren't stopping. They're methodically destroying human worlds. We need to find these dragons, whatever they really are. After hours of heated discussion, the council reached a compromise. A small expeditionary force would travel to Drazel to investigate Cassie's theory, while the main fleet prepared conventional defenses. General Donovan volunteered to lead the mission, surprising many who knew his skepticism toward ancient mysteries. I still don't believe in dragons, he told Cassie as they prepared for departure. but I believe in covering all possibilities. And right now, we're running dangerously short of those. The expedition departed Concordia Station aboard the IGD stealth cruiser Artemis, a sleek, advanced vessel designed for deep space reconnaissance. Its complement included elite IGD soldiers, scientific specialists, and Cassie herself. As they set course for the distant coordinates, she stood at the observation deck, watching Concordia recede into the distance. Behind them lay the remnants of humanity, scared, wounded, but still fighting. Ahead lay a mystery buried by time and deliberate secrecy. And somewhere, the Krivak fleet continued its inexorable advance, methodically erasing human existence from the galaxy. Cassie clutched the small vial containing a sample of her blood, the key that had awakened ancient technology on Persei 3, and perhaps the key to humanity's survival. She whispered the phrase that had burned itself into her memory. Dragon's blood awakens dragon's kin. When darkness falls, fire begins. She hoped, with every fiber of her being, that fire would come soon enough to save what remained of her species. The approach to Drazel was conducted with extreme caution. The Artemis dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, using minimal power to avoid detection. Intelligence suggested the Krivaks had expeditionary forces throughout this sector, hunting down remaining human outposts. As they neared the coordinates, a pristine world came into view, a planet of vibrant blue oceans and emerald continents, wrapped in gossamer clouds. Unlike most habitable worlds, there were no signs of civilization, no orbital platforms, no atmospheric pollution, no artificial lights on the night side. If intelligent life existed here, it either predated industrial technology or had advanced far beyond it. Preliminary scans show breathable atmosphere, Earth-comparable gravity, and abundant plant life, reported Dr. Nadia Chun, the expedition's xenobiologist. But there's something odd about the energy readings. Fluctuations that don't match any natural pattern we've seen before. General Donovan studied the tactical display. Any sign of Krivak presence? None so far, sir, responded Lieutenant Kai, the sensors officer. But there's significant interference from the planet itself. We can't be certain. Donovan made his decision. We'll take a shuttle down. Small team, minimal equipment. If this place is as important as our archaeologist believes, we don't want to announce our arrival. The landing party consisted of Donovan, Cassie, Dr. Chun, and 6 IGED Special Forces operators. They touched down in a mountain valley surrounded by dense forest, where the strange energy readings were strongest. As the shuttle's ramp lowered, they were met with air heavy with moisture and the rich scent of vegetation, reminiscent of Earth's rainforests, but with subtle, alien notes. Stay alert, Donovan ordered as they disembarked. This place may look untouched, but Project Draco wouldn't have been classified without reason. Cassie consulted her instruments, orienting herself toward a massive stone formation visible through the trees. The energy signature is coming from there, about 2 kilometers east. They moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, the soldiers taking point and rear guard. The vegetation grew increasingly strange as they advanced. Trees with iridescent bark, flowers that seemed to track their movement, fern-like plants that retracted into the ground at their approach. These species don't match anything in our databases, Dr. Chen remarked, scanning a particularly vibrant specimen. The evolutionary path here took a completely different turn than on human worlds. As they neared the stone formation, the trees thinned, revealing what they had only glimpsed from a distance. Not a natural mountain, but a colossal structure, weathered by centuries, partially reclaimed by vegetation, but unmistakably artificial. Massive columns supported an architrave carved with familiar symbols, the same dragon motif Cassie had studied on Persei 3. It's a temple, she breathed, all momentarily overwhelming her scientific detachment. Or perhaps a fortress. The entrance was a towering archway, large enough to accommodate something far bigger than a human. Stone dragons flanked the passage, their expressions neither benevolent nor malicious, but watchful. Alert, The energy readings are strongest inside, Cassie noted, checking her scanner. Whatever we're looking for, it's in there. Could be a trap, one of the soldiers muttered. General Donovan nodded. Agreed. But we didn't come all this way to admire the architecture from outside. Standard infiltration formation. Weapons ready, but fire only if fired upon. They crossed the threshold into cool darkness. Lights from their equipment revealed a vast hall supported by columns that stretched upward into shadow. The floor was inlaid with metallic patterns that seemed to pulse faintly beneath their feet, responding to their presence. These aren't just decorative, Cassie said, kneeling to examine the patterns. Their circuitry of some kind, still active after who knows how long. As they advanced deeper, they encountered the first guardian, a biomechanical construct resembling a massive lizard, but with metallic components integrated into its body. It lay dormant, its surface covered in dust and climbing vines. Is it dead? Dr. Chen whispered, scanning it from a safe distance. Her answer came in the form of a sudden, jerking movement. The guardian's eyes, crystalline structures, flickered with internal light. Its head swiveled toward them with mechanical precision. Nobody move, General Donovan ordered, his hand hovering over his sidearm. The creature rose slowly, joints creaking with age. It studied them, head tilting in a curiously bird-like manner. Then, to everyone's surprise, it stepped aside, clearing the path forward. It recognized something, Cassie realized. Or someone. All eyes turned to her. The blood, she theorized. If I triggered something on Persei 3 with my blood, maybe these guardians are programmed to recognize the same genetic markers. They proceeded cautiously, encountering more guardians, each activated upon their approach, each stepping aside after what seemed like a scanning process. The passage led them deeper underground, where the architecture became less weathered, more clearly technological despite its ancient design. Finally, they entered a vast circular chamber. Unlike the stone construction above, this room was lined with a metallic substance that gleamed in their lights. At its center stood a raised platform encircled by what appeared to be control stations, their surfaces covered in the now familiar dragon script. This is it, Cassie whispered. This is what Project Draco found. She approached the central platform, drawn by an intuition she couldn't explain. The controls responded to her proximity, illuminating with a pale blue glow. Holographic displays spiraled upward, showing star charts, technical schematics, and text in the ancient language. Can you read any of it? General Donovan asked, his skepticism giving way to cautious wonder. Not exactly, Cassie admitted. But since Persei 3, I've been sensing meanings, as if the knowledge was implanted somehow when I touched that artifact. She moved her hands over the controls, not touching them, but following the flow of information. This facility is a repository, a library, but also something more. Her brow furrowed in concentration. It's talking about the sleeping ones, guardians placed in stasis until needed again. Dragons? Dr. Chen asked. Yes, Cassie confirmed, but not mythological beasts. Advanced beings, a species that allied with humans thousands of years ago against the Kravoks. They possessed technology far beyond what even we have now. But something happened, a betrayal. They were hunted almost to extinction. By the Kravoks? Donovan asked. No, Cassie's voice dropped. By humans, or some faction of humans. There was a schism, those who wanted to continue the alliance, and those who feared the dragon's power. She looked up from the displays, her expression troubled. Project Draco wasn't about finding the dragons. It was about making sure they stayed hidden. Before they could process this revelation, the chamber trembled. Dust sifted down from the ceiling as a distant boom echoed through the structure. Lieutenant Kai's voice crackled over their comms. General, Kravok ships have entered the atmosphere. They're heading directly for your position. How did they find us? One of the soldiers demanded. They must have been searching all potential human outposts, Donovan replied grimly. Or maybe they know exactly what's here and are making sure we don't find it. He turned to Cassie. Can you wake them? These dragons. She stared at the controls, uncertainty plain on her face. I don't know. The text mentions a blood key, similar to what happened on Persa 3. Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer this time. Well, we're out of options, Donovan said. Do it. Cassie removed the vial of her blood and searched for something resembling a receptacle among the controls. She found a small depression in the central platform, perfectly sized for the vial. With a silent prayer to whoever might be listening, she placed it inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the platform began to descend, revealing a spiral staircase leading even deeper below the surface. The holographic displays changed, showing what appeared to be a massive underground chamber filled with enormous, pod-like structures. The hibernation vault, Cassie breathed. They descended the staircase, emerging into a cathedral-like space carved from the living rock. And there they were, dozens of massive, scaled forms encased in crystalline shells. Dragons, not the fire-breathing monsters of Earth legend, but clearly the inspiration for those myths. Their bodies were streamlined, adapted for flight despite their size, with anatomical features suggesting both incredible strength and high intelligence. "They're real," Dr. Chun whispered, her scientific skepticism overwhelmed by the sight. All this time, the myths were based on actual encounters. Another explosion, much closer. Dust and small rocks rained from the ceiling. "How do we wake them?" Donovan demanded, eyeing the nearest pod. Cassie approached it cautiously. The surface of the pod seemed to thin as she neared, becoming transparent enough to reveal the creature within. Its scales shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deep emerald and azure. Though dormant, there was an unmistakable power in its form. Muscles coiled beneath the armored hide, ready for action despite centuries of sleep. The pod's surface responded to her touch, rippling like water. Following instinct, she pressed her palm flat against it, allowing a small cut on her hand to make contact with the material. The effect was immediate. The crystalline structure began to dissolve, releasing a rush of preservative gases. The dragon's massive chest expanded with its first breath in millennia. Its eyes, multifaceted orbs of amber, opened slowly, focusing on Cassie with frightening intelligence. It rose to its full height, easily 20 feet tall, even in its crouched position, wings folded against its back. A sound filled Cassie's mind, not quite words, but impressions, emotions, images. The dragon was communicating directly into her consciousness. Asterisk, why awakened? Danger. Asterisk. Yes, she replied aloud, uncertain if vocalization was necessary, but unable to stop herself. Enemies. The Kravaks have returned. They're destroying human worlds. The dragon's consciousness pressed against hers again, stronger now, more focused. Asterisk, the old enemy. Breaking the long peace. Asterisk. Before she could respond, the roof of the chamber partially collapsed. Through the opening, they could see Kravak dropships descending through the atmosphere, weapons blazing. IGD soldiers opened fire as alien troops began to rappel into the vault. The awakened dragon reacted with shocking speed. It unfurled massive wings, releasing a blast of energy. Not fire, but something like concentrated plasma that vaporized the first wave of Kravak soldiers. The sound it produced was unlike anything Cassie had heard before, part roar, part song, vibrating at a frequency that made her bones resonate. The other pods began to dissolve, responding to the first dragon's call. More majestic forms emerged, shaking off centuries of hibernation with remarkable speed. Fall back to defensible positions. General Donovan ordered his troops. Let them handle the assault force. The battle that followed was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The dragons fought with coordinated precision, using breath weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics and natural armor stronger than any military composite. They communicated without visible signals, moving as a single unit despite their size. The Kravaks fought back with advanced energy weapons and sheer numbers, but in the confined space of the vault, they were at a disadvantage against the dragon's physical power. Still, they pressed the attack with suicidal determination, as if driven by something beyond military strategy, something like fear or religious fervor. In the midst of combat, one of the largest dragons, scales the deep crimson of arterial blood, approached Cassie. Its consciousness touched hers, more articulate than the first contact. Asterisk blood of the keepers. You have remembered the old pact. Asterisk. Through this connection, images flooded her mind. Ancient humans working alongside dragons, building wonders that bridged the biological and technological. Ships that traveled between stars. Weapons that could reshape planets. A golden age of cooperation. Then came darker images. A faction of humans, fearful of dragon power, forming an alliance with the Kravoks. Betrayal. War. The decision by the remaining allied humans to hide the surviving dragons in stasis, protecting them from extinction, waiting for a time when they might be needed again. Asterisk, we slept. You forgot. The enemy remembered. Asterisk. The Kravoks attacked us because they feared we would wake you, Cassie realized. They know what you're capable of. Asterisk, yes. They sought to eliminate the keepers first, those with the blood key. Your colonies were targeted for this purpose. Asterisk. The mental connection was broken as a Kravok energy blast struck nearby. The red dragon shielded Cassie with one massive wing before retaliating with a focused beam of energy that cut through the alien ranks. General Donovan fought his way to Cassie's side, his uniform scorched and torn. We need to get back to the ship. Warn Concordia about what we've found. No, Cassie countered. We need to stay and coordinate. The dragons will help us, but they need to understand what's happened while they slept. They need to know that most humans aren't their enemies anymore. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. A Kravok commander, his segmented armor marking him as high-ranking. He spoke in a harsh, clicking language that Cassie shouldn't have understood, but somehow did. Abominations. You were meant to remain buried. This cycle was to be ours. The red dragon responded, its mental voice now projected, so all could hear it. Asterisk, you broke the accord. You struck first against the human worlds. The cycle continues as it must. Asterisk. We will burn every world, the Kravok commander raged. Starting with this one. The projection vanished, and moments later, the ground shook violently. Through the breached ceiling, they could see a massive Kravok warship positioning itself above the temple. They're going to bomb the entire site, Donovan realized. Trying to bury you all again. The red dragon turned its gaze upward, eyes narrowing. They will fail. It issued a silent command, and the other dragons formed a circle. Energy built between them, a swirling vortex of power that shot upward through the opening, striking the Kravok vessel with devastating force. The ship's shields flickered and failed, its hull breached in multiple locations. Secondary explosions rippled along its length before it crashed several miles away, disappearing behind the treeline. In the aftermath, silence fell over the temple. The surviving Kravok ground forces retreated in disarray, fleeing back to their remaining ships. The dragons stood vigilant, some nursing wounds that leaked luminescent fluid, but none fallen. Cassie approached the red dragon, who seemed to be the leader. You saved us. Thank you. Asterisk, the alliance was sworn in blood. It endures beyond memory. Asterisk. Will you help us? The Kravoks have already destroyed several human worlds. They'll keep coming. The dragon studied her, its ancient eyes unreadable. Asterisk, we are few now. Once we numbered millions, but we will honor the pact. Asterisk, its mental voice took on a harder edge. However, we must know, can humans be trusted not to betray us again? General Donovan stepped forward, holstering his weapon in a deliberate gesture. I can't speak for every human, but I know we face extinction without your help. And I know enough of history to recognize that fear often leads to our worst decisions. He straightened to his full height, impressive for a human, but still dwarfed by the dragon. I give you my word as a soldier. I will fight alongside you, and I will oppose any who would betray this alliance. The dragon lowered its massive head until it was level with Donovan's. For a tense moment, they regarded each other, ancient intelligence meeting weathered warrior. Then the dragon nodded, a surprisingly human gesture. Asterisk, the pact is renewed. We will fight. Asterisk. As the team prepared to return to the Artemis with their extraordinary allies, Cassie felt both exhilaration and dread. They had found humanity's ancient defenders, awakened slumbering gods. But the war ahead would reshape human civilization forever if humanity survived at all. When Cassie Dracos had left Concordia Station, she'd been an archaeologist with a wild theory. As she returned aboard the IHD Artemis, she was the focal point of the most important diplomatic mission in human history. The logistics of transporting dragons through space had proven challenging. Only 3 could fit aboard the Artemis itself: the Red Leader, whom Cassie now knew as Pyraxis, and 2 others. The remaining dragons followed under their own power, demonstrating an ability to navigate space that defied conventional physics. They created energy fields around themselves, propelling through vacuum and formation alongside the human vessel. On the bridge, General Donovan and his officers watched the sensor displays with a mixture of awe and unease. Mighty as the IHD was, the casual display of power from beings who had been thought mere myth was humbling. They could have conquered us at any time, Lieutenant Kai observed quietly. Why didn't they? From what Cassie and Neuralink have shown us, that's not who they are, Donovan replied. They're guardians, not conquerors. Cassie had spent the journey deepening her mental connection with Pyraxis, learning the true history of dragon-human relations. The dragons, or Draconid, in their own language, had encountered early human space explorers thousands of years ago. Recognizing potential in the young species, they had shared knowledge and formed alliances, accelerating human development by centuries. But not all humans welcomed alien influence. A faction called the Purists had secretly allied with the Kravoks, xenophobic beings who saw all other intelligent life as competition to be eliminated. Together, they had launched a war against the Draconid Human Alliance. The conflict had nearly destroyed all 3 civilizations before the Draconid agreed to hibernate, hidden away by their loyal human allies, waiting for a time when they might be needed again. Concordia Station on approach, announced the navigation officer. They're hailing us. Admiral Zhao's face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mask of control barely containing shock. General Donovan, your message indicated you found allies. These energy signatures accompanying your vessel, are they what you described? They are, Admiral. May I present Pyraxis, Elder of the Draconid. Donovan gestured to where the massive red dragon had curled himself into the oversized cargo bay converted to temporary quarters. He and his kind have agreed to help us against the Kravoks. The Admiral's composure cracked slightly. I see. The Council is assembling now. We'll need to prepare the station for their arrival. When the Artemis docked, a tense reception awaited. Armed guards lined the massive hangar bay, a precaution that Donovan had advised against but been overruled on. Military and civilian leaders stood behind protective barriers, watching as the cargo bay doors opened to reveal Pyraxis. The dragon emerged with dignified slowness, wings folded against his massive body, head held high. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, but none dared move as the ancient being surveyed them with eyes that had witnessed millennia. For creature of such power, Pyraxis displayed remarkable diplomacy. He lowered his head in greeting and projected his thoughts not just to Cassie now, but to all assembled. Astra's people of Earth and her colonies. We meet again after too long an absence. We come not as conquerors or saviors, but as allies, honoring an ancient pact written in shared blood and sacrifice. Asterisk. The council session that followed was unlike any in human history. Dragons, physically too large for the chambers, participated via holographic projection, their thoughts translated by Cassie, who had become their de facto ambassador. Military data was shared, strategic options discussed. The Kravoks had already destroyed 5 major human colonies and damaged many others. Earth's defenses had repelled the first wave, but intelligence suggested a larger attack was being prepared. Our remaining fleet is gathered near Jupiter, Admiral Zhao reported. But simulations give us less than a 30% chance of repelling the next Kravak offensive. Numbers alone will not decide this conflict, Pyraxis communicated. Asterisk, the Kravaks fear us more than they fear you. This is why they struck first, to eliminate the keepers, humans with the genetic key to awaken us. Asterisk. And how many of these keepers remain? Asked Counselor Vega. Cassie stepped forward. We don't know exactly. The genetic marker appears to be rare, possibly passed down through specific family lines. My own ancestry traces back to Greece. Perhaps the myths of dragon slayers were actually tales of dragon allies. What matters now, General Donovan interjected, is that we have a fighting chance we didn't have before. The Draconid bring capabilities we've never seen. Over the next 48 hours, preparations accelerated. The Draconid worked with human engineers, helping to modify weapons systems for greater effectiveness against Kravak technology. Knowledge buried for millennia was rapidly integrated into defense strategies. Cassie found herself working alongside Pyraxis, translating complex technical concepts between species. The mental bond between them strengthened with use, and occasionally she caught glimpses of his memories. Vast perspectives spanning centuries, the pain of betrayal, the long darkness of hibernation. Why did you agree to hide? She asked during a rare quiet moment. With your power, you could have won the war. Pyraxis's thoughts carried a deep sadness. Asterisk victory through devastation is no victory at all. The conflict was destroying all our worlds. Sometimes wisdom lies in patience, in allowing time to heal what force cannot. Asterisk. And now, do you regret awakening? Asterisco no. The cycle turns as it must. The Kravaks never abandoned their hatred. They merely waited for human guardians to forget their purpose. Asterisk. The intelligence network reported alarming news. The main Kravak armada had begun its approach toward the solar system. Over 300 warships, including several planet killers, capable of reducing Earth to molten rock. In the final War Council, Pyraxis proposed a daring strategy. Asterisk, we must not wait for them to reach Earth. We strike at their approaching fleet while they are still in deep space, where civilians cannot be harmed. Asterisk. A preemptive attack. Admiral Zhao looked skeptical. We be outnumbered 3-1. Asterisk numbers. Always numbers with humans. Asterisk the dragon's mental voice carried a hint of amusement. It is not quantity of ships that will determine this battle, but the unexpected. The plan crystallized, while the main human fleet engaged the Kravak armada head-on. A smaller force led by General Donovan and supported by Draconid warriors would execute a flanking maneuver to target the Kravak command ships. The Dragon's ability to navigate space without conventional drives would allow them to approach undetected by Kravak sensors. As the day of battle approached, Cassie found herself assigned to General Donovan's strike team aboard the stealth cruiser Nemesis. I'm not a soldier, she protested. I'm an archaeologist. You're our link to the Draconid, Donovan explained. And you've proven yourself capable under fire. We need you, Cassie. The human fleet departed Jupiter's orbit with solemn ceremony. Every available ship had been pressed into service, from massive dreadnoughts to repurposed civilian vessels. Alongside them flew 42 Draconid warriors, their bodies gleaming like living jewels against the blackness of space. The journey to the engagement point, a region of empty space halfway between Neptune's orbit and Proxima Centauri, took 3 days. 3 days of final preparations, of warriors contemplating mortality, of prayers to various gods, or silent meditation on the vastness of the universe. Cassie spent much of this time with Pyraxis, who would lead the Draconid contingent alongside Donovan's strike force. Are you afraid? She asked the ancient being. Fear is appropriate before battle, came the measured response. Asterisk, only fools feel no fear. But fear must be. Acknowledged, then set aside. I fear failure more than death. Asterisk. The Kravak armada was detected exactly where intelligence predicted. A massive congregation of warships, moving in precise formation, weapons charged and ready. Admiral Zhao's voice echoed through the fleet communications. All vessels, battle stations. Remember what we fight for today. Not just our own lives, but the future of our species. For Earth and all her children. The human fleet surged forward in attack formation, while Donovan's strike team and their Draconid allies veered away, using a nearby asteroid field for cover as they maneuvered toward the enemy's flank. The main engagement began with a blinding exchange of energy weapons. Human ships, though technically outmatched, fought with desperate courage. The Draconid, integrated with the fleet, unleashed devastating attacks, their plasma breath weapons cutting through Kravok's shields with ease. Aboard the Nemesis, Cassie monitored the battle alongside General Donovan. The ship vibrated as it pushed its stealth systems to maximum, creeping ever closer to the massive Kravok command carrier at the heart of the enemy formation. "Status of strike team?" Donovan demanded. "All members ready, sir," replied Commander Santos, leader of the boarding party. Draconid escort is maintaining position. Their plan was audacious. While the Draconid created a diversion, a team of elite IGD operatives would board the Kravok command ship and deploy a specialized virus designed to disrupt their communication network, throwing the hierarchical Kravok command structure into chaos. The moment arrived. "Execute Operation Firestorm," Donovan ordered. Outside the Nemesis, Pyraxis and 5 other Draconid broke formation, accelerating toward the Kravok command carrier. They released concentrated plasma bursts that overwhelmed a section of the massive ship's shields, creating the opening the boarding party needed. Boarding shuttles away. Santos confirmed as small, heavily armored craft shot from the Nemesis toward the damaged section of the Kravok vessel. What followed was controlled chaos. The boarding team fought their way through the alien ship's corridors while Pyraxis and his warriors engaged the Kravok defense fighters, drawing attention away from the infiltration. Cassie maintained the mental link with Pyraxis, relaying tactical information between the Dragons and Donovan's team. Through this connection, she experienced fragments of the battle with terrifying immediacy. The searing heat of plasma weapons, the satisfaction of enemies scattered before overwhelming force, the sharp pain when a Kravok energy beam penetrated one dragon's defenses. Commander Santos reports they've reached the central hub, Lieutenant Kai announced. "Deploying the virus now." For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to change. Then, gradually, the coordinated movement of the Kravok fleet began to falter. Ships broke formation, weapon systems misfired or powered down. "It's working," Donovan exclaimed. All vessels pressed the advantage. The tide turned swiftly. Without their centralized command structure, the Kravok ships fell into disarray. The human fleet, led by Admiral Zhao, drove into the gaps in their formation, targeting engines and weapon systems. The Draconid, no longer constrained to defensive positions, unleashed their full might. They moved between ships with impossible grace, their plasma weapons finding vulnerable points with unerring accuracy. Some physically grappled with smaller Kravok vessels, tearing through hulls with adamantine claws. Through it all, Cassie maintained the mental network, her mind stretched thin by the effort of connecting so many disparate consciousnesses. She felt every victory, every loss, as if they were physical sensations in her own body. Then came a warning through the link, a desperate alert from Pyraxis. The Kravok's supreme commander, realizing defeat was imminent, had activated a doomsday weapon aboard the command carrier. A quantum singularity device designed to create a miniature black hole, capable of destroying everything within half a light year. "We need to evacuate the boarding team and retreat to minimum safe distance," Donovan ordered. "There's no safe distance from such a weapon," Pyraxis countered. "It must be stopped." Before anyone could respond, the Red Dragon broke away from the battle, arrowing directly toward the command carrier's core. 3 other Draconid followed him, forming a tight formation. "Pyraxis, what are you doing?" Cassie cried out through the mental link. Asterisk, what must be done? Some fires can only be contained by greater fire. Asterisk. The four dragons penetrated deep into the command carrier, fighting through waves of defenders. When they reached the engineering section where the doomsday device pulsed with building energy, they formed a circle around it. Through Cassie's link, Donovan and the others witnessed what happened next. The dragons began to glow, their bodies becoming vessels for a power ancient beyond human comprehension. They were converting their life energy into a containment field. Tell our brethren that we die as we lived. Guardians of the flame, Pyraxis projected. Then, more softly, directed only to Cassie. Remember us, Keeper. The mental link shattered as the command carrier imploded, crushed by forces beyond normal physics. Where a massive warship had been, only scattered debris remained, and no trace of Pyraxis or his companions. The remaining Krivok ships, leaderless and demoralized, began retreating en masse. The human fleet, though bloodied and reduced in numbers, had achieved what had seemed impossible: victory against overwhelming odds. As the Nemesis rejoined the main fleet, Cassie stood silent on the observation deck, tears streaming down her face. Through her, generations of forgotten history had been reawakened. Through her, an alliance had been reborn. And through her link with Pyraxis, she had felt the ultimate sacrifice made to ensure humanity's survival. General Donovan found her there, his weathered face showing the exhaustion of battle, but also a newfound respect. He knew, didn't he? Donovan asked quietly. Pyraxis knew from the beginning that it might end this way. Cassie nodded. They all did. It's why they were created, to protect. It's what they've always done. The aftermath of the battle brought a new reality for humanity. The threat of the Krivoks had been pushed back, though not eliminated entirely. Their remaining forces had retreated to distant systems, their centuries-old vendetta temporarily suspended in the face of unexpected defeat. On Earth and the surviving colonies, reconstruction began. The alliance with the Draconid, 38 survivors who had pledged to remain alongside humanity, accelerated the recovery. Their knowledge helped heal devastated ecosystems and rebuild infrastructure at unprecedented rates. The dragons requested only one thing in return. The planet Drazel would remain their sanctuary, protected from exploitation or colonization. A place where they could occasionally retreat from the noise of human civilization, where future generations of their kind might someday be born. 1 month after the battle, a ceremony was held at Concordia Station to formalize the Draconid Human Alliance. Representatives from all surviving colonies attended, along with the dragon elders who had assumed leadership after Pyraxis' sacrifice. Cassie, still carrying the weight of all she had experienced, was asked to speak. She stood before the assembled dignitaries, human and dragon alike, searching for words equal to the moment. We stand here today because of sacrifices made across millennia, she began. Ancient guardians who slept while we forgot them. Brave souls, human and draconid, who gave everything in battle against darkness. We honor them not just with memorials, but with the future we build together. She gestured to where the largest of the surviving dragons, a silver-scaled elder named Thalaxis, had positioned himself. Our kinds were separated by betrayal and fear. We found each other again through necessity. But we move forward now in mutual respect and shared purpose. Thalaxis lowered his massive head in acknowledgement before projecting his thoughts to all present. Asterisk, the cycle of conflict and alliance turns through ages. What was broken is mended. What was forgotten is remembered. The Krivoks sought to extinguish both our flames, believing us weakened by division. Instead, they forged us stronger in the fire of shared survival. Asterisk. General Donovan, recently promoted to Admiral following his role in the victory, sealed the formal treaty with a press of his palm against a crystalline monolith, a technology created by the Draconid that would preserve the agreement for millennia, immune to tampering or corruption. With this pact, he declared, we acknowledge that humanity does not stand alone in the cosmos. We have allies, ancient and powerful, and we have a responsibility to honor their sacrifice with our actions. In the months that followed, Cassie split her time between Earth and Drazzle. On Earth, she helped establish the Keeper program, identifying and training others who carried the genetic markers that allowed deeper communication with the Draconid. On Drazzle, she continued learning the full history of dragon-human relations, determined that it would never be forgotten again. Sometimes, in quiet moments on Drazzle's highest peaks, she would catch fleeting impressions, like echoes of Pyraxis's consciousness preserved somehow in the planet's energy field. Not truly him, but a memory of what he had been, what he had taught her. One evening, as she watched the planet's twin moons rise over the ancient temple, now partially restored, Thalaxis joined her. The silver dragon settled beside her with surprising gentleness for his massive size. "You still mourn him?" he observed. "I do," she admitted. "He showed me visions of what once was, what could be again. A partnership spanning the stars. Pyraxis believed the cycle would turn again, that our kinds were meant to walk the cosmos together." The dragon's mental voice carried the wisdom of centuries. "He will be pleased to see the first steps taken. Do you think the Kravoks will return? Eventually. Their hatred is too deeply rooted to be extinguished by a single defeat. But when they do, they will find not separate targets for their malice, but a unified force. Cassie looked up at the stars, imagining the countless worlds waiting to be explored, the mysteries still to be uncovered, the bonds still to be forged. The path ahead would not be easy. Prejudice and fear still existed on both sides, but the foundation had been laid. "They bombed our colonies thinking they would eliminate us before we could find you," she said, smiling at the irony. "Instead, they awakened the dragons and reunited our peoples." Thalaxis made a sound that might have been laughter, a rumbling that vibrated through the stone beneath them. Indeed. Perhaps someday we should thank them. As night deepened over Drazzle, Cassie Dracos, archaeologist, diplomat, keeper of ancient memories, stood alongside her dragon ally, both looking toward the same stars. Behind them lay a history of alliance, betrayal, and redemption. Before them stretched a future limited only by what they could imagine and build together. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Kravoks nursed their wounds and plotted their return, unaware that their greatest fear had been realized. The dragons were awake, and humanity no longer stood alone.